So the other day I watched two different videos that got me thinking about this topic again. And then, hilariously enough, I watched the Tildeer video that just made me laugh out loud, or at least chuckle to myself to be more accurately, about how right I was, yet how I didn't have any data to support how right I was. I always like those types of situations where, like, I'm right and I know I'm right and I don't need any study or any statistical data to know I'm right. I just utilize common sense. And then there's a study that comes out that proves I'm right, and then I'm like, yeah, nigga, if you guys just would have listened to me before, we wouldn't have had to conduct all of this shit. So what am I talking about in particular today? Well, I'm talking about the 80-20 rule. Y'all, you niggas can read, that's why you clicked on the video. Now, for those of you all who don't know what the 80-20 rule is in regards to dating or male-female relationships, the 80-20 rule is the general idea or belief that 80% of all women are trying to date the top 20% of men, and by vice versa, probably about 80% of men are trying to date 20% of the leftover women. It's kind of how it works, though the 80-20 rule honestly is not an idea that should be taken quite literally. I mean, the basic principle of the idea is that women are usually, due to their hypergamous instinct, trying to get the best quality man that they can. I'm going to put that in quotation marks, which you'll see why later as the video goes on. But that's the general idea. The general point of the 80-20 rule is to say that usually women are trying to date the top percentage of men at the chagrin or mostly to everyone's detriment, completely ignoring the vast majority of men that exist. I don't really think that anyone should take the 80-20 rule literally, or at least I don't. And when I first started using the term, I actually always said it's probably more accurately 70-30. I think 70-30 or maybe 35-65 is probably more accurate to what is going on, but again, I'm just sweating the details there. I don't think you should take the 80-20 rule to heart, but it is something very important to discuss and think about. The basic principle, not really the accuracy of whether or not the percentages are correct. Now, I wasn't the first person to coin the 80-20 rule. At least I don't think so. To my knowledge, I am the first person that came up with the 80-20 rule. I'm the first person. No one ever told me about it. It was something that I kind of figured out on my own, just through lots of observation. But I'm pretty sure that there are other people that have kind of figured this out too on their own as well. However, the way I was able to figure out the 80-20 rule was a thing was because I just kind of paid attention to the type of men that a lot of these women were dating, especially like in high school and even in college. And I noticed that no matter where I went, there was always a funnel of all the type of men that women were trying to date. Again, no matter what environment I was in, high school, college, even when I went to nightclubs and whatnot, it was very consistent, and there was no way around the fact that women were certainly rejecting the vast majority of men and only picking a select few. And this is also something that I kind of realized when I noticed something about the girls in high school that I talked to and was friends with, and noticed that they were all complaining about the same guy in particular, and it just seemed really strange to me. That's kind of how I was able to figure out the 80-20 rule was a thing, and it was really looking at those traits is what really kind of told me and helped me understand exactly why it's a problem to begin with. So the first thing I'm going to do when it comes to breaking down the idea of the 80-20 rule is first explain why it's a thing thoroughly. I'm going to try to accurately explain why we have a 80-20 rule or such a huge discrepancy between male and females when it comes to dating. And then I'm going to end the video off with a lot of examples, or different examples really, just kind of highlighting its practical application and really showing you exactly why this is a topic that should be discussed and why it explains a lot of issues and a lot of problems when it comes to dating between males and females, among other things. The 80-20 rule is only really a bit of an issue when it comes to dating. Because relations between men and women is way more complex than that. But, again, it is an important thing to understand as to why so many relationships are failing to form from the outset. As far as why relationships fail in general is a discussion I'll probably create some other time. So the first thing we need to understand when it comes about the 80-20 rule, you have to understand, is that hypergamy, if used correctly, is actually not as bad as a lot of people think it is. In fact, if hypergamy as an instinct was used to its most logical ability, or even its most reasonable ability at all, then we wouldn't have any problem at all, because women would just pick really good men to father their children, and then they'd be in stable, good, strong relationships. The problem with hypergamy is what happens when you take the instinct and you remove the telos of sex. or you use the intended function of what sex is for. Sex, no matter how you slice it, is for reproduction. That's why we do it. The reason why it feels good is so we're compelled to keep doing it. If the only thing that you had as a species was the pain of childbirth, then a lot of women probably would not have sex. I mean, if the only thing they got out of it was just pain and misery, yeah, we probably would have less people. So I'm pretty sure evolutionarily it's easy to understand why sex is a pleasurable thing and why it feels so good. But no matter how you slice it, the whole purpose of it is reproduction. Now, for the individuals who are going to comment with the obvious comment, because I get this comment all the time, I don't have sex with dudes. When I have sex, I'm not trying to have children. Just because sometimes sex is repetitive. Look, listen, Nick, I get it. I'm not obtuse. I know it feels good. I'm not dumb. However, being able to use something outside of its intended function does not change said intended function. In other words, if I have a pair of scissors and I use it to open up a can, it doesn't change the fact that the pair of scissors' intended function is to cut paper. Hell, you can take anything and use anything outside of its intended function. A shirt's intended function is to cover your body and keep you warm. You could use it as a towel to wipe sweat off of your face or to dry off after you take a bath. That's not what it's for, but you can use it to that end. So, sex is for reproduction, but you can use it in order to pleasure yourself. It's possible. So, that out of the way, it's very important you understand that the purpose of sex is indeed reproduction, because it's from this lack of understanding stems all of the problems that we're dealing with and why we even have an 80-20 rule to begin with. See, the problem is all of the traits that are necessary to rear up good children are not traits that are conducive to what a lot of women are functionally going for nowadays. A lot of women, as they operate now when it comes to relationships, a lot of ways people look at relationships now are not barriers or testing grounds which to see compatibility to raise children, but relationships or friendships at the very least, or enhanced friendships at the very least, or codependent relationships at the very least, of which one can obtain validation and love from the other person. You don't really need love as the way it's described from very many people to raise children. Love, as it's described from lots of people, is really more just validation that makes you feel good about who you are as a person. Love makes you feel good about you. A lot of people pick relationship partners that make them feel good about them. This is especially women more than men, by the way, because men kind of like women as an ends, while women are usually after the validation they get from men or the things they get from men. Women don't normally look at men as an end to themselves. They look at men as a means to an end to get something from them or out of them. Again, in this case, it'd be attention, validation, or things. And by things, I just mean anything: money, house, class, things. Nigga, you know what I mean? So, when you understand that, this reason, this whole problem of women only looking at men as things or as a means to an end to get things is because they've disconnected the idea of childbearing. If a woman is thinking about sex as a vehicle in order to make children, there's no way in this world, reasonably, she would pick a man that she knows would be unreliable to raise those children, because you don't need very many scientific studies, although there's lots of them, to show you that you need a father in order to raise a child productively or healthily. Children without fathers suffer from lots of different problems that I'm not going to get into in this video. But again, the point being is that if a woman is thinking consciously of this, understanding the purpose of sex is to make people, it doesn't mean that she'll always have sex to make people, but at the very least, her mind, or at least her hypergamous instincts, would be tailored towards one who would be trying, or at least would be a good person to have children with. And you remove that purpose from sex, on the other hand, and you just make it something about validation, making them feel good, all you're left with is women just trying to feel good. And all you're left with is men just trying to feel good. And when you're left in a status like this, the reason why we have it so that women are only trying to get the best men is because all they're really looking for is just validation. That's because that's all you're really left with at that point. So here's the thing. All of the traits that are, the traits that make it so that women want to have sex with, say, the bad boy jerk archetype, Casanova archetype, are literally antithesis to that of rearing children. This is why you see lots of women who end up becoming single mothers, or even women who are in long-term relationships with men they don't like, always complain about the qualities of men that they're with. Because one, they never consider that they could have children with these men to begin with, which honestly is a little bit of a criticism against their mental faculties, but I digress. But the problem is, all of the traits that they were attracted to, say his aloofness, and the fact that he doesn't care, the fact that he challenges her and makes her try to come to him, are not traits that are really healthy for a kid. And if a woman was thinking about producing children, then she obviously would reject the man offhand, because she would know that there is no way in any healthy environment having a man that doesn't care about his children, or himself for that matter, is going to be healthy for them. Again, when you remove the telus of sex and you're left with just women that want things, you end up getting, well, gold diggers. Just women who use men to get things. It's not any more complex than that. It's really quite that simple. Now you see, the 80-20 rule doesn't really just make it so that women are picking the bad boy archetype, but they also make it so that women create standards that are ridiculous. And I don't mean ridiculously high. I do truly and genuinely just mean ridiculous. I do just mean that a lot of the standards that a lot of women create are just silly. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that when I say just silly in comparison to the way men may select. But before we get into that, I do want to make it abundantly clear that when I say the 80-20 rule, while I don't really think that it can be accurately shown to be the case, it has been shown to be that way in really, really small studies, say on like OkCupid. Tildeer actually put this in his recent video where he was actually talking about incels, but I'm going to use it anyway really to illustrate my point, because I really do think it was great. I'm going to put a link to his entire video about incels, but I'm just going to use this clip here to show you the data and to just kind of show you niggas that I was right.
Doing or anything to go by. You may remember the OkCupid data, which suggested that women find a staggering 80% of men to be less than average in attractiveness. Tinder fares very much the same way, where 78% of women are all fighting over the top 20% of men, leaving the bottom 80% of men to be fighting over the bottom 22% of women. The absolute runaway, unregulated nature of the sexual marketplace seems to be potentially part of the explanation.
So all that being said, why is the 80-20 rule such a problem, and why does it need to be discussed? Well, I've been saying it constantly throughout the course of the video. The 80-20 rule, not only the rule, but the behavior that it is describing, creates a situation when it comes to dating where women create incredibly high standards for one, and sometimes create just downright ridiculous standards for two. It ends up creating a gigantic marketplace where there's a lot of people who are incredibly unsatisfied, not really because they're not worthy of being dated, but because they're not perceived as worthy for being dated. It also creates a situation where a lot of people or a lot of families are not created on a consistent basis. By consistent basis, I mean not created on the basis of actually having a healthy understanding of what it means to raise a child, or a healthy understanding of what a family unit is for, and more so it creates a situation where lots of people are just born as accidents, and creates a perpetual cycle that we see in lots of different communities. The reason why it needs to be discussed is because perhaps if it becomes drawn to one's attention, perhaps if someone, particularly young ladies, start to think consciously more of their actions and behaviors, perhaps the behavior could be curtailed, and perhaps we could actually start getting people to start moving towards more reasonably choosing partners, not based purely on their own validation, and not purely based on the silly idea of love as it exists. Love not being an emotion of one caring for another person, but more an emotion that makes someone feel good about themselves. If we can get more people to start focusing on actually trying to create families in a reasonable manner, not necessarily always having sex to make children, because I don't think anyone would ever do that, but more so having them make it so that if you are going to have sex, you do it with people that you're fine with having children with, and thus, should an event occur, you'll be able to raise a child effectively. If we can start getting people to think more complexly about that, maybe we can start fixing some of the social issues that we have. And I think that's why, more than anything else, it's important to bring this up. So I'm going to end the video here mostly for time, because I don't want it to be really long. In the next video, I'm going to go over 2 different videos to really highlight why the 80-20 rule in practice is such a terrible thing, and while it just ends up making lots of women really single, and why it hurts lots of men in their pursuits of trying to date women. So that being said, man, I actually hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, man, go ahead and click the like button. And shoot, go ahead and click that subscribe button. Comment in the comment box below. And as always, you guys have yourselves a great day. I'll see you cool cats soon. Adios.